Great to be here today, and I am kind of honored to be here, and I'm glad Jerry asked me to MC our little discussion today about the present and future of 101 FM. I am proud to say, I guess when people think of me, they tend to think of public media, public radio, public TV, where I've spent the lion's share of my career. But I am happy to say that I did spend a portion of my career on a part-time basis and I have to stop myself from saying WDVR, because that's what it was. And back in the days when I was there, we straddled the WDVR Easy 101 period, but it's all united by the frequency 101 FM, which I'm sure I scarcely need to tell anybody in this room is one of the great radio stories in our country's history. To this day, 101.1 FM is the last of the independently owned radio stations in a major market in America. And it has certainly been one of the great success stories now for over half a century. So I did a little weekend stuff for several years back in the mid-'70s to early '80s, and very happy to, I guess, do my own bit to pay tribute to Easy 101. They certainly helped to educate my children and to raise my family, for which I appreciate that very much. We're going to have several folks talk to you, starting right now, basically. And we're going to call up, first of all, the program director for More FM, as it is known these days. This gentleman started his radio career in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, apparently. And from what his biography says, he considers his move to Philadelphia to run More FM to be a true capstone of his career. It's a real highlight for him. So that's wonderful to know. So why don't we get things rolling by introducing you to the program director for More FM, Chuck Knight. Chuck, come on up.
Well, I am one of the luckiest guys in the radio business because this is the best job in the radio business, working with Jerry. I remember in the mid-'90s, I worked at a competing station here in town called Star 104.5. If anybody remembers a brief run of that radio station. And ultimately, B101 back in those days kicked my rear end as a program director and sent me packing out of town. And I actually went to work for a company that I'd worked for before, Saga Communications, back in Columbus, Ohio, and spent 11 years there until Jerry and Blaze Howard called me up and said, hey, would you be interested in programming B101? And it is truly an honor. But the story that I always tell is, if you remember, B101 back in those days was on Presidential Boulevard. Right now we're on City Avenue. And I always used to, as the program director of the competing adult contemporary station, Star 104.5, would always drive around that corner, that bend on Presidential Boulevard, where they run radar traps there, so make sure you're very careful when you're driving through that area. But I always used to drive by there and come around that bend and look up and see that B101 sign and go, oh! So to be at the radio station is really an honor. I kind of still have that outsider's perspective because many of Jerry's people have been with him for a long, long time. I've been there 8 years. And one of the things that I think I still value is that outsider's perspective of what this truly great radio station is all about. And that is about investing in research, investing in what people want, need, and desire out of the radio station. And then with Jerry's direction, we actually listen to those people and we give them what they want, need, and desire. And then we market to those people. And I think those are the things that have kept this radio station on the map for so many years. And it really isn't that difficult of a thing to do. Unfortunately, in today's corporate world, it becomes a difficult thing to do from a financial standpoint. And I think that's one of the things that has set our radio station and Jerry apart from the rest of the competition out there, is that we've been able to be nimble and we've been able to move. So that in 1963, when this radio station, when the frequency signed on as WDVR, that through the history to Easy 101 and then B101 in the early 90s, and then to More FM in January of 2014 is when we evolved the radio station through its continual evolution. And really, it has been all about the frequency, the 101.1 frequency, and the evolution through that. And so that puts us to today. People often ask me, why? Why did you switch to 101.1 More FM? And with every switch, I think we have been able to increase our audience share. And when we left the B101 days and signed on More FM, we were, within specific demographics, we saw a 20% increase. So we have been able to be successful in turning the page of the radio station to something new. We didn't change the name of the radio station to refocus it demographically. We kept the radio station and its demographic focus right where it is. So the name change was not about getting younger or getting older. The name change was about perceptions of who we are and what we were, and that was the reason for the change from Easy 101 to B101. And so the reasons really didn't change from B101 to More FM. It was all about audience perceptions and the music styles or the lanes that people perceived us to be in. We're a female-based radio station. We're all about women 30 to 50 years old. That really hasn't changed over the course of many years. So staying in the lane was one of the important things to us as a radio station. Station's also known for Christmas music. And we're coming up to a very popular time of the radio station where we typically will do 6+ shares of 15, 17 shares, and those are unheard of in today's radio, in today's very compressed radio. So we're just weeks away. Usually in the middle to latter part of November, we'll switch over to our Christmas music format and invite each and every one of you to give us feedback. We have a survey on our website right now, morefmphilly.com, and you can go on and you can help us choose the music, rate the music that we play, and also the date that we start playing it. So that survey is up there right now, and we appreciate your feedback because the radio station really is built about asking people what they want, need, and desire and delivering it. I'm sorry, do you have a question?
I had a question. I'm from the television end. What was the concept of B? Because that really stuck in my mind. What was the thinking behind that, other than Jerry's brilliance?
Well, Jerry probably could answer that best of anybody.
It was basically, getting a name that was easy to understand. That was really tricky. And nobody had ever used B in the market. So that was the market as well.
I learned to love honey and bees since then.
But I want to say one thing, and I think I speak for Jerry and all of us at the radio station today, is that thank you guys, and thank Ed. I mean, you were part of the original cast too. And to anybody who was involved in that radio station, we are a successful radio station today because of all of the hard work that the WDVR folks put in, the Easy 101 folks put in, the B101 folks put in. We are a successful radio station built on the triumphs and the passion and the blood and the sweat and the tears that everybody else put in before us. So to the old alumni, thank you very much. We'll treat your hard work with respect and continue to push the radio station forward. Thank you.
Yeah, Chuck, thank you for mentioning that. Since you are pointing out some of the earlier folk who manned the airwaves at 101.1 FM, I certainly have to take the opportunity to point out a guy who was there on day one, actually behind the microphone, Dave Scher, who's sitting at the. So, boy, when we're going back, you're going back back in 1963. 1963, 52 years. A little kid announcer back in those days. Good to have you with us, Dave. No one will ever accuse me of having any skills at all in the technical end of things, or running a station, or being a station manager, any of that sort of thing. The thing that I have always done, that I've always enjoyed the most, is just being on the air, because it's a whole lot of fun. It's a great way to make a living, and I'm looking at a woman right now who feels pretty much the same way, I think. She is a longtime WBEB personality. Jen has been on the morning team for quite a while now. She'll give you more of those details. And she says it suits her very nicely, because when her early shift is finished, it gives her time later in the afternoon to meet her kids at the bus stop on the way home from school. And as it turns out today, it also has given her time to come on over here and join us for our luncheon in honor of 101 FM. So please, come on up, Jen Ryan.
Thank you very much. I wanted to let you know, I was talking to Mike. He was telling me about all the collectibles that he has from various radio stations that he's either worked with. He's got a ton, including this Emery board. Anyway, I too have a collection, but not like his. I collect all the T-shirts from radio stations that I've worked at. And while I feel like I've bounced around a lot, and I've been to many, my husband says, I promise someday I'm gonna make you one of those quilts. You know, the T-shirt quilts, people do it for colleges. Apparently I'm gonna get one for my radio station logos. And I said, but honey, I don't have enough to make a quilt, which in radio is a good thing. This is a good thing. Maybe a baby blanket, but as an example, yes, I've been at WBEB, B101, now More FM for, I'm just finishing my 6th year, and I was hired by Chuck at B101 to do middays, loved it, and then we went to mornings just a few years ago. We're now More FM, and in fact, my on-air partner, Bill Taffro, not here today, but he and I have only been together for a year. We just started in January. We are having a blast, not to toot our horn, but we were nominated for our Marconi for this year. We're just so honored. I mean, to be nominated was fantastic. We haven't even been together a year, but a very deserving station in Chicago won, totally fine. But the plaque is hanging in our Jock Lounge, and we're all very, very proud. But it makes getting up at 2:50, I mean, worthwhile. Any of you who have done mornings before, and like Ed said, it is fun. Doing mornings on WBEB is fun. I know I'm gonna come to work and I'm gonna be laughing, and not just with Bill, but with our listeners. We have established real good friendships, like genuine friendships with our listeners. One of the ways, I think we do this, and I give Chuck Knight total credit for this, gonna share with you a little trick. So every Sunday night, my partner Bill and I, we write literally what we call a diary. And we email it to ourselves and to Chuck. And it's like a list of 5, 6, 7 things that happen to us throughout the week in our normal lives. And then on Monday morning, we all meet and we go over and we talk about, okay, how can we talk about this on the air? Do you think this would relate to our listeners? And it's a wonderful way to really bring our lives, you know, into what we talk about on the air. And so it's that genuine friendship that I think we develop with our listeners because of our genuine lives, and that's what we talk about. So anyway, I do want to thank all of you, the broadcast pioneers, again, like Chuck said, for what you've done before us. I love working at BEB. You have paved the way. Thank you, Chuck. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Jay. And I learned something from Jerry just a couple minutes ago. If you've ever been into our building, right there on City Ave, the lobby's beautiful, glass everywhere, you can see the goings-on. But there is a wonderful collection of antique radios. I always thought they were Jerry's. They're not, and no one knows who they are. I mean, no one knows who they belong to. But anyway, do come visit us. Take our Christmas music survey too, like Chuck said, at morefmphilly.com. And thank you again for paving the way. Thank you.
Don't you think when he's standing here, he should be holding a box and saying, for a pledge of $120, you can get this? I really, no. Here he goes. But I'll tell you a funny story. When I was the pledge producer, Ed was tagging along with Bill Weber. And Friday nights, we taped for, early mornings, late nights. So we're taping, it's there. And next thing you know, the stage manager comes over to me and says, we're live on the air. And I said, no, we're not, we're taping out. He said, oh, I know we're taping, but we're live on the air. Look at the air monitor. And I look up, and sure enough, we're live on the air. So I said, okay, tell the director, tighten the shot on Ed. So he's holding this box, and they tighten so the box disappears. And while the camera is on, now he has no idea what's going on. The stage manager takes the box out of his hand and puts the box for the live show in there. And Ed says, and yes, for a pledge of $120, you can get this show right here. But he had no idea what it was. My wife was watching at home and had no idea there was anything wrong at all. That's because the man's a professional.
That's another cool story about me, which I wish I remembered, but if Jerry remembers it, I believe it is true. Yeah, we did have some times over there, didn't we? I must tell you that prior to this week, I've never had an opportunity to meet one of the true movers and shakers in the radio business by the name of Jay Myers. And as it turns out now, this week I am seeing him today for the second time in 24 hours. Because as some of you may know, I hope you know anyway, Broadcast Pioneers has a program in which the true pioneers, if you will, of broadcasting in our market and sometimes beyond have an opportunity to sit down and be interviewed about their careers, and we put it on the Broadcast Pioneers website. Well, as it turns out, we did that yesterday with Jay about 24 hours ago at the 101.1 headquarters on City Avenue. And I was just told today, as a matter of fact, that everything happily went so swimmingly that it is already put together, and it's on the website right now. So if you'd like to learn more about this gentleman, you can catch that on our Pioneers of Broadcasting program, which is online as we speak. Anyway, he's a local guy. He's on the board of directors of WBEB for the moment. He is running the day-to-day operation. More about that in a few moments. And I just have to mention that in our interview, he said he started out the way I did as an air person, like Jen and so forth. But he said when he was on the air, he would look at the program director and think to himself, I can do a better job than that guy. Well, as it turns out, he was 100% right, and he's been a program director, as CEO at stations all over the East Coast and beyond, and they've all been the better for it. Now he's doing the same service for WBEB. So with that rather long introduction in mind, for the second time, happy to introduce to you Jay Myers.
Well, it's great to be here. It's actually the second time that I've had the opportunity to speak before this group. I was telling somebody that I can tell you it was exactly 12 years and 6 days ago that I spoke before this group. It was October of 2003. It was October 15th, and the reason that I know that is my 12-year-old is 12 years and 3 days old right now. So she was born 3 days after that, so that has always been marked in my history. By the way, we're talking about the Back to the Future date. Does anybody else know why this day is even better than that? Okay, so for me, it's one of, take away the birth of your children and all that kind of stuff, it's like maybe the greatest moment of my life, which is that I was in the ballpark and in the locker room as a member of the press when the Phillies won the World Series in 1980. Today, 35 years ago. It was like living a dream. So I understand the frustrations of the Chicago Cubs fans that will obviously continue on for another year or so. It's also great to be here because I see a lot of people that I've known for way too long. I actually, over 40 years ago, wrote for a weekly newspaper that Mike Nice owned, all right? I was such a big fan of Tom Moran at WIP and I would I used to look at him with just like gilded eyes and everything like that. It wasn't until like 4 years ago that I knew he wasn't 6'2". I mean, it's just... but a lot of great things. I am so honored to be, there's one thing I need to explain to you. So one of the people that was on the list to speak today is Jim Loftus, who is going to become the president and CEO of More FM beginning on November the 1st. Jim is under a non-compete with CBS that actually prevents him from being here. So he personally sends his regards to everyone, and he looks forward to attending future Broadcast Pioneers luncheons, probably the dinner next month, and catching up with everybody. So he sends his regards, but the reason he's not here is that we're honorable, he's honorable, he's under a legitimate non-compete with CBS, and it's just improper for him to be here. So I wanted everybody to know and understand that. And I'm fighting a cold. So this is like such a thrill for me. I got a call in May from some folks that I've known for years. I used to be with a company called J-Corps, and they were the backers of J-Corps, and they called me up and said, hey, you're a Philly guy, and everything like that. We're involved with WBEB. Would you like to join the board of directors? And I was like, oh my God, WBEB, Jerry Lee. I mean, to be able to be associated with an iconic radio station and an iconic man, to me was like, oh, are you kidding? Don't ask twice. I don't need any other. Yes, please, for sure. And so it's been such a thrill to get involved in this because not only is it an iconic radio station, and Chuck focused on it, it's a standalone in a consolidated industry. There aren't very many of those that are successful because it's hard to be. And it's at the top. There are none of those, okay? There's nothing like this in the radio industry. It is so different. But what Jerry has instilled in this organization, and we will continue it going forward, is the great thing is the layers of decision-making aren't there. It's like, good idea, let's go. Whereas with the consolidators, it's, I have an idea, okay, let me check it with this person. I need to run it up to my regional manager who needs to then go run it up to the corporate office and do that kind of thing. I worked for one company during my career where we could basically make decisions the way they made them, even though it was a big company, they make them at WBEB. And we used to call it that we had the ability to turn an aircraft carrier on a dime. Normally it takes about 4.5 miles to turn an aircraft carrier around. And so that helps us stay ahead, and we continue to do that. And as we got involved in this and saw all this wonderful stuff, we said to ourselves, we need a leader for the next generation who can continue to bring the spirit and the legacy and the innovation that has always been associated with 101.1 to the table for the next generation. We basically said, and I'm coining this is me, I made this up, but we said, who could be Jerry Lee for the next generation for us? And really, there was one name that came to my mind is when I started to think that. And then that person became available. So, just out of the clear, it's like where the stars align? So the stars suddenly align, and Jim Loftus became available. And for those of you that know Jim, you'll understand what I'm saying in a heartbeat. And for those of you that do not know Jim, I encourage you to get to know him, and then you'll understand exactly what I'm saying. We are so excited about what's going to happen at WBEB going forward. Chuck mentioned the website. I'm pleased to announce that in a couple of weeks, for the first time ever, WBEB will begin to stream, and that will make our brand capable of being heard, taken with listeners wherever they go in the world, which is just so important in the day and age that we live in right now. So it's real exciting. Quick side note, because Chuck mentioned about Presidential Boulevard. So when I get asked for on the board, and it's like, let's go up, we're going to have a meeting with the people at the radio station and everything like that. So I flew in, and the other two board members from the company, they flew in to Philly, and I said, hey, I'm a native, don't worry about it. I'll rent the car, and I'll pick you up at the airport. So as I'm on the bus to the rental car company, luckily I happened to open a note from, I don't know, I think it might have been from Chuck, and I noticed at the bottom of the note, it says something about an address on City Line Avenue, because I would have taken those other guys and we would have been driving up and down Presidential Boulevard going, I swear to God that the station is here. But as Chuck said, come by for a visit. The building is amazing. There's a history of the radio station that just goes around the hallways and the walls. And I'm sure everybody in here has visited a lot of facilities, television, radio, whatever. WBEB is truly a unique experience. True honor for me to be here, to be associated with the radio station. The kind words that you said, honestly, being selected to be interviewed for that really is I will now put it among the 3 highlights of my broadcast life. 5 years ago, Drexel University gave me a Lifetime Achievement Award, which was a great honor to me. They chose me because I have a mathematics degree, and I made my career in the arts. And about 20 years ago, they put the College of Science and the College of Arts together, College of Arts and Science, and they figured that was a nice mix. But you know what? I got an award. Next guy that got an award was Ed Rendell. I was good with that, 2012, Radio Ink magazine named me America's Best Broadcaster, which was a true highlight. And then to be honored by the broadcast pioneers as somebody worthy of being interviewed and put on the site, I rank up with those other 2. So thank you, and thanks for your support of WBEB.
Thank you, Jay. And by the way, don't forget to check out our interview, which is now online. And one of the things you'll learn about Jay is why early in his career, when he was an air guy doing sports, a late, great sports writer in the Philadelphia area called Herm Rogel, who maybe a couple of people will remember, referred to him as Screaming Jay Myers. And you'll have to find out why that happened. It's all on there, as a matter of fact. Well, this next man is a man who has been interviewed on that series already. What can you say? I mean, I could come up with encomia from here till next week, and it wouldn't do Jerry Lee justice. When you see the word visionary in the dictionary, you know that Jerry's name is there. Pioneer, of course. One of the true giants of the radio industry, not only in Philadelphia, but nationwide. So I won't belabor that point that you obviously know already. I just can't help but tell you, though, very quickly before I bring them up, one of the the coolest Christmas party I ever went to in my life when I was on the staff of 101, Easy 101 as we called it in those days. I guess it was back in the early 80s. Jerry invited the staff to a Christmas party at his house. And some of you may know that among the toys that Jerry accumulated in his life to celebrate his success, and I am not making this up if you don't know this already, the car, the Aston Martin two-seater that was prominently featured in the film Goldfinger, one of the most famous automobiles, I guess, really, certainly in film history. Well, Jerry owned it, as a matter of fact, kept it in a special place on his property. And of course, as part of the party, he took us down to see that car. What a thrill it was, with the ejection seat and everything. One of the highlights of the evening was when we put Dave Scher in the ejection seat, pushed the button. Boy, did he splat when he hit the ceiling. Oh, how we laughed, Dave. You remember that. Well, anyway, I just had to repeat that because it's something I'm never going to forget as long as I live, for having the honor of having worked for Jerry Lee at one time. So, well, with that personal thought in mind, let's bring him up. The man himself, Jerry Lee.
I don't know what you say after that, but I'd like to just tell you briefly how I became involved in the station. And that is, I was selling a programming service, and nobody would buy it. And I had called on Dave Kurtz about a year and a half before he got his license. And he was the only person, in my mind, that had a legitimate reason for not buying my programming service. So I see in Broadcasting Magazine that he gets his license, and I called him, and I asked to have lunch with him. And I came in and had lunch, and then he said, I got to get back to work at Philco. He was an engineer there. And I said, well, I'm only in town for the day. Let's have dinner. So at 7 o'clock that night, we had dinner. And by 10 o'clock that night, on the back of a napkin, I had a 3-year contract but the key thing in this 3-year contract is you could fire me at the end of the first 12 months if we weren't the #1 FM in Philadelphia. And we became #1 in 4.5 months, and the rest is history. But the next big year was 1968. It was an incredible year. We had, actually it was really starting in 67. We were in Germantown in a loft of the First Pennsylvania Bank building. We had pipes on the ceilings that were, in fact, it was such a loft area that people were always joking about even the mice were hunchbacked. It was really not a nice facility. And I desperately wanted to be able to move, but how do you get, in the radio, nobody knows where you're broadcasting from. You can be in a shack, doesn't matter. But I wanted to get out of this rat hole. And so I came up with the concept. Keep in mind, back in 67, in the media world, we were heavy drinkers, really heavy drinkers. So I decided that I could justify the move based on putting a bar into the radio station. And I was able to persuade Dave Kurtz, who was a little weary about this, the idea of putting a bar in a radio station, but I did. And so here was the routine. Also what I did, I rented an incredible automatic typewriter, very large. It was the first one ever built, as a display piece, so that when I would bring people into the radio station, I would show them this, which people were really impressed with. Then I'd bring it into my office, then I had a sliding door that went into the bar. So we'd go in the bar, we'd have a drink, and then go out for lunch. And my closing ratio was unbelievable. So I said, hey, if you have one bar, wouldn't 2 bars be better? So I took a penthouse apartment at the 191 on Presidential Boulevard. And I went to Spain and brought back all kind of Spanish artifacts, an incredible chess set that was just unbelievable. And there's somebody in the audience here that's been there. And we started to entertain. Now keep in mind, in 68, FM was considered worthless. About 3% of all the radio revenue was on radio, or was on FM, the rest was AM radio. So I had to do something to make it like we were different than everybody else. And so we started to run parties. And remember, the very first party we ran, the executive from Pepsi-Cola was there. And we had never gotten any money out of Pepsi-Cola. And I walked out in today's dollars with a $150,000 order because all of a sudden we were no longer a losing FM station. We were a third commodity. We were an AM, FM. We were a third commodity that was a successful marketing company. So then I figured, well, okay, the biggest challenge I had at that point is no AM rep firm would represent an FM station. I mean, and so you were doomed to failure because you couldn't get in with the big boys. So I was able, by using the Penthouse, I was able to get the local rep from the Petrie Company to come and have a drink at the Penthouse. And I said, we really got to be represented by your company. He says, I agree, but Bob Coppinger, the president of the company, will never, ever, ever agree to having us represent an FM station. So we had a plan. Once a month, Bob Coppinger from Petrie would come into the market and do all the bars. And so we arranged, when he was finished with his last bar, which was 1 o'clock in the morning, he would stumble by my apartment. By 3 o'clock in the morning, he was pushing his face down. I got to represent you. I got to represent you. And I said, well, you know, I'll think about it. He said, no, you got to. He said, would you come to New York? This is on a Thursday. Would you come to New York on Tuesday? And I will persuade you why. We are perfect for you. Well, the rest is history. We went from in 1967. We were the #1 billing station in the country on FM, billing $337,000 in business, which is about $1 million in today's dollars. Our national business was 100,000 out of 337,000. By getting this AM rep firm, our national business from 100,000 to 500,000, and we broke $1 million. And this is when no FM had ever broke 350,000. We were at $1 million. And that's when people started to say, yeah, maybe you can make money with FM radio. On that note, it's 2 o'clock, right on the button, and I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you for having us.
Jerry Lee, everybody. And just before we sign off, I just want to make sure we remember his name has been mentioned. I want to mention it too, of course. A man I guess I saw more often in those days, back when I was on the radio there, than I had a chance to see Mr. Lee, was Dave Kurtz, of course, who was right there with him at the beginning and was also a force for making that station the great radio force it is today. So I want to make sure that Dave Kurtz's name is remembered as well in the history of 101 FM. Well, that's all I've got.